Thanks, everyone, for being here. Thanks to Kelly and to Jessica and the Parents Association for pulling this all together. It's a great opportunity for us to all meet, and I appreciate all of the work that they did. Also, I want to say I'm sorry for those of you who had to fight Ticketmaster all day to get tickets to be here. Their chronic problems really are still going on, so we're working on our relationship with them. So I'm glad you all made it through in the preferred seats. So as we get going here, it has been a while since we've been able to do this in person. Last year, via Zoom, it was really dialed in well, and then we had a technological meltdown that paused it for about 15 minutes in the middle. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we're on the upward trend for our opportunities to be here together. But it is important, I think, for us to do this, not only just to be together in community, but also to talk about some of the big ideas, some of the things that we are all about, some of the things, hopefully, that you care about and why you send your children here. So I'm going to do it a little bit differently this year. So for those of you who are longtime fans, I'm not going as deeply into nuts and bolts statistics and data. We're going to definitely talk about this year, great things that are going on, but I also want to try to kind of zoom back out a little bit, talk about the kind of teaching and learning that we do here. So that's what this is about. So sprinkled throughout for inspirational purposes, we've got some nice pictures, including some of these that just remind us how lucky we are to be here on this beautiful campus with these beautiful facilities. And I want to start here, which is one of my favorite quotes. There's not going to be a lot of reading required, but let's take a look. So I like to start with this quote, and we put it at the very beginning of our strategic plan a few years ago. And I love everything that it represents, and I think it's what we as a school community should be striving for. Little details matter, but big plans matter. It's a big world. We have high aspirations. You have high expectations of us. So I want this to be sort of the frame around the way we think about how we go about doing school. And it really is the last line that matters the most, right? We're all here because we want our kids to be as well prepared to navigate the world as they can possibly be. That is, our task is nothing less. And that's what I'm here to talk about tonight. How do we do that? How does North Shore do that? How does a great school do that? So, as we always do, we always have to look back at our mission and our values. Because without those things, it's really easy just to veer off the path or follow some sort of shiny new thing. I don't like to do that. I like to try to use this lens and say, what are we doing and why? And this idea of making sure that we are living up to this mission is what my administrative team talks about all day when we are making decisions. And I'm very lucky to work with that group of people. As we do, we all are hoping that our students leave as self-confident, ethical citizens of the world who embody our motto of live and serve. And that has been our motto since about 1921. And it was the students who chose that motto. I think that's a pretty important message for us here. How do we do it? These are things we'll talk about today. What are our values? Those are listed down here at the end. We could keep going. But these are the things that we should look to, particularly our mission, as our North Star. So how do we know that it's working? Well, you can sort of see it, you can feel it, you can measure it in a lot of different ways. But one of the ways that I like to think about it is that we're not here just for students to get through the day. We're not here for them to just get through school. If we're doing our job, our students are thriving. And that's a really broad and really important term in 2023 in 2033, with a complicated world. What does it mean? These are some of the things, as we talk about this here at school, that it means to thrive. Kids who are happy and healthy and high-performing. Kids who are confident and capable and ready to achieve. Kids who are curious, who love to learn, and who care about others. Kids who understand themselves, can connect to others, and are comfortable with difference. Kids who are inclined to care and compelled to serve. And a lot of what we'll talk about tonight are kids who have skills and mindsets as people and as students that they can transfer to different situations. That's really the killer app to me, is those skills and how they can be used in an ambiguous situation. Because how many of us face the world where the facts are pretty clear, the boundaries are well defined, and it's getting crazier and crazier every day with every news story. So this is a lot about what we'll talk about tonight. And what we'll talk about a little bit is how we got here. And to me, there is one of the things that defines this place, one of the reasons that I came here 7 years ago, is the intentionality around the things that happen here. And that can be everything from Cinnamon Bear and JK and the lessons that you learn there, all the way up to why we require students to take a fall sport in their 9th grade year. There's intentionality there. So on the left, it's kind of the old way of doing things, okay? Someone like me would sit in front, and you would, actually this is kind of interesting here. Test later. But a lot of us went to school like this on the left, right? That's not going to be sufficient enough in this world where our students are going to have to deal with massive amounts of information and ambiguity and change at a fascinatingly huge rate. So what's on the right? Well, on the right is what a classroom at North Shore looks like. Not sitting in a row listening, but using your hands, active and engaging, and usually working with somebody else. And then on the bottom, this might be totally strange to some of you who are in the lower and middle school. This is our upper school schedule. And there is about 10 different elements of that schedule that were clearly, carefully chosen to represent what we know about how kids learn, what we know about what kids need to be well, things like sleep, how the brain processes information, how much rest the brain needs in between bouts of processing information. So while it takes their students a little while to learn this, and for the first time in 7 years, I actually just started teaching again yesterday. So I had to sit down with somebody and say, okay, wait, which block do I have? What day is it today? And I showed up and they were all there too. So, but intentionality is a lot of what we need to be doing. And that's why we're here, because some of the intention that we have, we follow through with, and we have intentions to come. Just some of the things that make this community an important learning community, right? You can talk about schools. I like to talk about learning communities, right? And how fun, these are all from this year, how fun to have some of these traditions back. The Halloween parade, the bonfire, and that's our new 9th grade class getting oriented to the beginning of upper school. A few more, some happy people learning new things and working together. So, what's intentional? Part of our intentionality is who we bring to the school. We work really hard. The admissions office works incredibly hard to find great families and great students to come. And so I told you I wasn't going to do a lot of nuts and bolts and detail today, but I think some of this is pretty important for us to realize as we talk about the position of strength that we're in and why it's important once you are in a position of strength not to get complacent and to keep dreaming those big dreams. So we were incredibly fortunate to open the school at our highest ever enrollment this year. Pretty happy about that. Let's hope it keeps going, within reason, of course. And there's a lot of work that goes into all of that process. This is always fun to see, just for information. I think if you compare these, and we have these maps year over year over year, we see significant trends, and we see areas where we are spreading and getting more and more families from. So Glenview has really jumped. Evanston continues to grow. And Chicago. More students from Chicago in the school than you might think. We see that as one of our, one of our sort of proudest indicators that people are willing to come a distance for what we offer. We are also incredibly proud of the fact that we are able to offer aid really to everyone at the school. We get into a little bit of nitty-gritty here, but you all pay tuition. Even if you are paying full tuition, it costs more than that to actually run this. And that's why, and we'll talk a little bit about it, that's why annual giving is so important. That's why philanthropy is so important. So in a way, everybody is on some sort of aid to be here. And then we have a little over 20% of our student body who get direct financial assistance to be here. That's really important to us in our mission, where we started, and it's something that we continue to work towards bolstering every year through things like annual giving, mostly actually not annual giving in the capital campaign. And by the way, I'm going to stop for plenty of questions at the end. This is one of those slides that I am not going to run through every point. I had 6 slides like this before we condensed this slideshow down. There's a lot going on at this place, but one of the things I hope that you're seeing is that you are getting regular communication from your teachers, from your division heads, from the communications office, from the parent association, from the coffees that we do, that let you know some of the really exciting things that we're doing. And they're not just things that we do every year, although we continue. But some highlights would be we have a new math program in the lower school that we're really excited about. We've added the first Lego League in the lower school, which is an amazing collaboration tech opportunity. It kind of checks every box in the skills sheet that you'll see. We have an amazing new 8th grade humanities course, if there are any 8th graders in here, called Chicago in the World. And the Learning Circles curriculum we'll talk a little bit about is really exciting. And then in the upper school, we've revamped our clubs program. The college counseling office, which is one of the crown jewels of this place, continues to get better and better. And we have amazing leadership with Kristen Kaczynski and Matt Mathiel, who joined us this year. And one of the things they're helping kids navigate is a whole new set of electives in the upper school that we added in. One of those is my class, actually, so lucky me. It's good to be the king sometimes, right? You think I want to teach a class this year? Okay, why not? Go ahead. A few more pictures. This was just our JK friends down here on the bottom had a great opportunity at Morning Next the other day, and they were able to talk to our speaker the other day afterwards, and they bring smiles to our face. But we also had a really nice presentation by some lower schools at Morning X about recycling and about how the lower schoolers are trying to tackle recycling at North Shore in a different way. So are they going to remember a lot about recycling? Maybe. Are they going to gain from having to stand in front of an auditorium of 500 people at the age of 5? Yeah, and that is intentionality, and that's woven throughout the program. We also have been working really hard. One of our defining characteristics as a school is that we're JK-12. There are not a lot of JK-12 schools around here. It is fundamental to who we are. We have a committee that is dedicated to building connection across grades. So that's really important in day-to-day. Our beautiful Live and Serve lab right over there. If you haven't seen it, take a tour afterwards, where Drea Gallagher works with kids from JK to 12, building projects with a social impact. Our athletic program has had considerable success, and the participation numbers continue to grow. Our EDI curriculum, we heard a little bit about some of the things from Jessica, is becoming more and more central to who we are, and other things like that. The arts are always important at North Shore. Some of you have been here as students. All of you have students who are participating in arts in some way. So if you went to one of the several lower school concerts in the last couple of months, they became JK-12 concerts. And what a wonderful way to be a mentor as an older singer for a younger singer. I talked a little bit about athletics. I'll talk a little bit more later. What amazing opportunities these kids have. Part of how we have always believed that athletics, healthy mind, healthy body, has to be central to what we do. This is where I had about 5 different slides talking about progress that we've made towards our strategic plan. Decided to shrink that down and tell you a little bit about what the major categories of that plan are. I think probably a later communication that really highlights some of the progress that we've made, but we have moved the ball on every one of these 4 major categories in items big and small. And that's really important because that's that evolution, and that's how we get better. And that's how we have the conversation around who do we want to become as a school and why. I'm going to go back. If you haven't seen it, the website down there at the bottom, you can go right to the front page of the website under leadership. There's a really nice picture of me, and then right under that is a copy of the strategic plan. Don't get distracted by the picture. I know it's hard. Where are we headed? I think that's the main reason that we're here. A lot of these initiatives that we have started from the strategic plan are kind of starting to coalesce because ideally they converge. We've had a few hiccups along the way. COVID slowed down some of our processes, to be sure, but we're continuing to move. So the skills curriculum. I've talked about this for the last couple of years. This is fundamental to me. It's part of the reason that I think I was hired. You'd have to ask Molly Ulrich, she's here somewhere, when I was hired. But I keep coming back to this quote on the bottom. They got a bunch of college university presidents into a room. They say, what do you want? With independent school heads. And the heads, who obviously want to get their kids into great colleges, they said, what do you want? Do you need more oboe players? What about squash? Should we build a squash program? And the president's like, no. This is what we want. Complex problem solvers who know how to collaborate and lead in diverse settings. We can do that because you can learn how to do that. Those are skills. And it is not an accident that those are going to show up when we talk about the core skills. So this slide, gotten a lot of mileage out of this slide. What we're doing here is we're talking about what the next 5 miles look like. This is about 2 years of work on the full faculty, trustees, parents, administrators. When we thought about, okay, working backwards, what do kids need to be able to do when they leave this place? Let's talk about that. And so we sifted through departments and through divisions and thought about different age groups and did a lot of research and reading. And, schools think about skills in different ways. This is ours. So this is the goal. And this is what everything should be steering towards when we roll out new things or when we decide that we're going to sunset some things that we're already doing. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. So what comes next? We've got that list. Oh, that's nice. Looks good. We could post it up in the classrooms. But that's not enough to make sure that we're actually following through. So we had a full faculty meeting today. where our assistant head, Mary Fielder, who's here, laid out the process that's coming up next, JK-12, for our teachers to begin to map these skills onto their curriculum. So there's things you've all experienced in units that you know your kids have loved and things like that, and they're all intentional, and now we're just going to name it. So why do we have chorus? Well, we're going to name that, and how does it support these skills? I'm going to go back for a second. Can you do all of these things in, say, a math class? Absolutely, you can. And we had a presentation today from the chair of the math department who mapped out for us how every one of these are things that show up in his math class. We'll talk a little bit about that too. After we start doing that mapping, then we're going to do the next level of our sort of backwards planning. What does a portrait of a learner look like when you leave each division? So once you leave the lower school, what should you know? What should you be able to do? Once you leave middle school, once you leave upper school. We know already that we're doing a lot of these things well. We know that we're hearing from kids who are going, when our kids go off to college, we get amazing feedback on what they can do, how they contribute. Well, it's that intentionality. And then after that, how do we take it all together and make sure that we've scaffolded these skills so every kid in every grade is getting a mix of all of these skills, building these mindsets, developing these dispositions that they are going to carry out with them. And they hopefully are going to serve and make the world a better place when they leave. So what does that look like? Just a couple of examples. Today we heard from the middle school team. And the middle school for the entire trimester is doing a project based on this book, which is a pretty new book, called Better Than We Found It. And it's a series of 30, 40 different examples of students who have done something to improve something in their world. Okay, what does that mean? Well, every 8th grader is currently working on a project to make something around the school or in their community better. Now that, okay, that sounds good. Like, we like projects. We like making the world a better place. Embedded in that is a whole lot of key skill development. So any of you who are project people know that we were just talking about this actually, a parent and I, the executive function necessary for an 8th grader to plan and execute a project, every once in a while, that can be a little bit of a lift for an 8th grader, right? But they're practicing. So I had a pair of 8th graders who came to meet me last week. And I wish I could tell you, that 2 weeks early, they called my assistant and they said, we're looking for a time that we could possibly meet. But a half an hour before they were free, they swung by and they said, hey, are you free in half an hour? And I said, well, I can be. And like, okay, we'll be there. We'll see then. And they had a project from this. And it's a school-related project. They came in, they sat down. I mean, I should have asked them for money, frankly. They were sitting at the table like we were having a campaign briefing. But they said, we have some questions we'd like to ask. And they took out their iPad, and they asked a series of questions. And I gave them some of the answers that they wanted and some they didn't really like. And they have a task because I didn't have all the answers. So I see Mrs. Hooper is here. Mrs. Hooper, their task was that they need to reach out to you via email to ask questions about their school project. So little things. They'll learn a lot about their project topic, but they're also learning how to deal with an adult, how to deal with an authority figure, how to write an email that isn't, hey. And those are the small things that add up to be the really big things if you build it and scaffold it over time. So the middle school teachers today told us how this unit contributes to these 2 of our essential skills. And then we heard from our amazing lower school art teacher, Emily Colbert, who who talked about a study that the first graders do of this artist who is known for her work of pumpkins. And if you look down here, she has already begun mapping this unit. So she has already put in how there are elements of this first grade unit that support thinking critically and flexibly, approaching challenges with creativity and confidence, and communicating effectively in multiple ways. Because printmaking is communicating. It's also problem solving, right? How do you learn how to transfer print and ink? What happens? Is there a reverse? Do I want that? First grade. But if you think about it in terms of, oh, this goes on the wall, okay, that's nice. But if you think about it, the fact that we're developing those skills and we're paying attention to where that happens in the curriculum, you're talking about a different thing. Which is how we get to the wellness program. Because when we started talking years ago about what our key skills were, this was pre-pandemic, and yet it was already obvious to those of us who are educators, probably to all of us who are parents, that wellness is not just an academic concept. In fact, more and more of the research shows that wellness, social, emotional, physical wellness, is not only a nice to have, they're actually prerequisites for learning to actually be able to happen. So, when we talk about wellness, and as we continue to develop our wellness program, that's the frame that we put around it. And this is why I love this slide. We all took health classes at one point, right? That's what wellness was when we were kids. Don't smoke. That was already, at least by my time. Food pyramid. We don't even use this food pyramid anymore. They threw this out like 25 years ago. And it meant, try not to get sick. So this picture on the bottom is one of my favorites. North Shore even was a little bit, I'm cheating here, because we were a little bit ahead of our time. This is actually a North Shore picture. And kids, when they were younger, every morning had to have the doctor look in their throat, check to see if they had a sore throat. That's Dr. Philip Sporn, who also was an alum. And then that other gentleman is former head of school, Nat French. So that's the sort of modern wellness part of it. Yes, they were checking for sore throats, and then they would shake hands with the head of school. How are you, Billy? Come on in. And that whole child combination of things is really what we're trying to expand upon, what we're trying to bolster. So what does wellness look like today? There's a lot in here. You can't really even see this whole thing. But you all know instinctively as parents that the topic of wellness has morphed and changed since we were in school. Even if we just talked about social media and screen and digital hygiene and digital citizenship, you know that wellness is different than when we were in school. Well, we're working on that. But physical education, mindfulness, the link of mind and body are things that you can't ignore in schools anymore. One doesn't stop at the door and then pick up after school or at home. So integrating all of those things in our core skills, care genuinely for self and others, is really about wellness. And so today you have to think about cognitive wellness, physical, social, and emotional. So what does that look like? I could have done 25 slides on this. I probably will at some point. Here are categories. Just when we talk about our wellness program, you really can't pull one strand out without the whole thing kind of collapsing. So physical wellness, we know about that. Get exercise, get fresh air, go out and run at recess, take PE, do all of those good things. Play a sport. Health education, bless you. We've continued to do health education. It covers a whole lot more today than the sex, drugs, and rock and roll sort of health education that you had in middle school or in upper school. And there's a whole list of those topics. And social emotional learning, okay? Read that left-hand column real quick. any one of us not wish for our kids to be able to do those things? And it's not just a nice to have. They're fundamentally important life skills that are becoming more and more important work skills, college skills, academic skills, and they're inextricable. So here's just a few of the things as we're now taking this wellness program and trying to scaffold it and build it division by division to make sure that we're hitting everything we need to do in developmentally appropriate ways, right? I think the extent of health education when I was a kid about sleep was you should get sleep. We now have reams of data on the impact that sleep has on every aspect of the way that we function as humans. And we know about the teenage brain. We know how it all changes in adolescence. We know that there are rhythms of when kids learn best. It all has to do with understanding the whole child and not just, do you remember when the Battle of Hastings happened? Right? It's a different kind of goal. That's what we're shooting for. So there's a lot that already happens in every division right now. I tried to highlight and highlighted in blue the physical parts of the activities, but just to show the contrast that those are only a portion of wellness. And yet it's a really important part of wellness for us. More and more, I'm sure none of your kids are on screens. Mine are on screens every once in a while. And it is, I think, changing the nature of how kids live. It certainly is changing the nature of parenting. I'll bet you if you surveyed parents about what they fight with their kids over, 10 years ago, no one was saying screen time. But I'll bet you it's top 3 for most of us these days. Physical connection to mind is really significant. So that's where we're working to bolster the curricular portion of our wellness project with a facilities portion. And that's something that we've done in this school for 100 years. If you've been in these different buildings, you hopefully recognize that the buildings have an intentionality to them that reflects our pedagogy and our curriculum. This new library, that Live and Serve lab, that upper school building, they are built because there are certain elements of education that we're meant to highlight and emphasize, like collaboration, project work, things that are on that skills list. So as we look to our facilities needs, we've done a lot of work on this campus, except for our wellness physical activity facilities. And that's got to change. So I teased this a little bit, but we've got some fun projects that I hope, because I took 43 minutes to contextualize, comes out of years of planning and a larger pedagogical framework. So what do we need to do? We need our athletic facilities and our wellness facilities to match the first-class caliber of the rest of our campus, because you can't pull those pieces out of what the skills curriculum means. That serves JK-12. It serves our kids who are taking PE, JK, all the way through 8. Our upper school wellness classes, all of our interscholastic athletes, all of our students who are looking for places to get fit, places to kind of connect with their bodies. So what are we going to do? A couple of different things. We've got a few phases, but the MAC gym on our campus, that's in purple. We're going to renovate that building, and we're going to add on to it to turn it from a gym into a wellness center. And it's going to serve a couple of different needs. And that's our goal. And that's a pretty ambitious goal. This is a 2-phase project. This is if we can shoot the moon and accomplish everything that we want to accomplish. That may or may not be possible right now, but we're starting, right now because we've got to make sure that we are serving that skills chart and we are serving this school philosophy. So on the left is the Mac gym. On the right would be a second gym. I'm going to break this down a little bit, so don't worry. That's what it would look like from Green Bay Road. We're kind of excited about the idea that someone driving on Green Bay Road would know that we're here. So, phase one, this and this. Taking a beautiful classic gymnasium with a really great kind of Hoosiers court and updating it for the way that kids exercise, learn, and play today. So I was a high school athlete. My facilities, actually they were worse than this, but the way that kids interact with athletics today is very different. We need to reflect that. The amount of sort of training involved, the amount of athletic support training that they need to have to perform well and to stay healthy has jumped and jumped and jumped as we've offered more opportunities. We'll talk about that. So that's phase one, and phase two would be adding an additional gym. We currently have 9 basketball teams that play in 1.5 courts. So when you think about the ripple effect of that, that means that you don't get as much playing time maybe as you would like. You don't get as much practice time. And your practices are going later, back when kids should be doing their homework, so they can get to sleep early, so they can be good students the next day. So it all ties together. So we're going to break this down into phases. And phase one, we hope, is going to start pretty soon. That's renovating and adding on to our current Mac gym. So our Mac gym needs a lot of updates. It has millions of dollars of deferred maintenance already. But it doesn't serve our younger students for PE as well as it could. It doesn't serve our athletes and coaches as well as it could. It certainly doesn't serve our spectators as well as it could. And we think we can fix that, and we can do it in a way that stays true to the school's mission and philosophy and is not extravagant or lavish, because we're not really a lavish or extravagant kind of place. But we do embrace change when we need it to happen. That's what the first phase would look like. Then we go inside a little bit. So if you've been in the Mac gym, you know that there's no space for kids to be kids. When they're playing, they're on the court. When they're not on the court, they might be in the storage room. And I'm not exaggerating. But what would it look like if at the end of the day, if you have the 5 o'clock practice and you don't have to drive off campus, run to McDonald's, get your food, come back for practice, waste time, eat crummy food, and then delay the work that you might need to be doing that night for homework? What if there was a lounge where you could go and you could have healthy food that we've already provided, you get a good snack, and there's a space where kids are comfortable, where there's really good Wi-Fi, where they can sit and they can do their homework, because a lot of them have group projects as it is. And then they can go right downstairs to a new changing room, get their stuff, come back up and practice, and be home by dinner. That shouldn't be rocket science, but it's just something that we have, we need to take care of, and we like to take care of things. This also serves as a great space for parents, for spectators. So you can, in our current gym, you can go and you can sit on the old wooden bleachers and, feel like the alums who sat there, in the 70s felt. Or we can make it a little bit easier for you to bring an elderly, to bring a grandparent to a game, to sit and watch a live stream happening in the building. Or you can just stand up and look right over into the court. Right? If you've got younger kids, they're going to be able to use this facility all day, every day. Every minute of these 2 gyms is scheduled, every minute of the day. Sometimes the PE schedule dictates the academic schedule because we want to make sure kids are getting exercise, and we move all the pieces around to get all those lower and middle school grades moving around, right? Because there's nothing worse than a bunch of middle schoolers who haven't gotten any energy out, right? We can do better by them. We can advance the PE program with more options, with more space, with dividers in this new gym. We can add whole new units when we think about this. And then we think about the last piece in terms of how kids today work out and exercise. It's more than, when I was in school, we had some barbells, and it hadn't been cleaned since 1937. And, everyone kind of stood around and watched somebody lift a barbell and yelled at them a little bit and then called it a day, right? Today, kids are training in different ways. They're much more sophisticated. They have higher expectations. We have great staff. We have Kristen Allen. We have Mark Medhurst, who are great supports for our athletes and for our students, JK to 8. They work in substandard spaces. It's time for them to be able to do the work with our kids that we want them to do, right? So, I went a little early. This is what the renovated Mac gym would look like, saving the floor and the beautiful windows here along Green Bay, but renovating everything else. Fun fact, for those of you who are interested in interscholastic athletics, hopefully tomorrow, our brand new live stream camera in the Mac gym will be operational. So we've invested in this amazing system that'll support our athletes in lots of different ways. We had to get cables from all over the world to make it happen. It was kind of crazy, but this camera will be transferred into the new gym, but we're trying to launch it, soft launch this week if everything happens. Tomorrow they program it. But what do kids expect? They expect to be able to see games. Parents want to see games if they can't be there. Kids want to have video so they can learn. Coaches want video so they can teach their kids better. We're on that path, but this is where it needs to go. Downstairs, this is the addition onto the Mac gym. Functional fitness space is a growing sort of new way that kids are stretching and practicing all kinds of different types of movement. We know a lot, it's not take a lap around the field and get out there and play. To protect kids from injury, they need to do a whole lot more warm-up and learn stretches. Our staff will help them do that in here. And this is also great lower school and middle school space as well, right? So we can start building skills, physical education skills, athletic technique for little ones before they get to high school. And so if you walk in, this is in phase 1, you walk in, you're going to be in a place where physical wellness is respected, invested in, valued. Because sometimes, one of the things is you look around, when you look in a building, you can sometimes see what people value. We invested in this room at the center of the campus as the very first thing that we did in our capital campaign, because this is the hub of learning for everybody in the school, and that was the right thing to do. We value wellness, physical, emotional wellness, and so it's time for us to invest here as well and show that it is co-equal to the other elements of our program. So, here's the punchline. We've been working really hard. We have architects, we have general contractors. We have begun the permitting process with the Village of Winnetka yesterday. Our first meeting happened. It could take months, and it will take months, because we love our friends at Winnetka, and they want to make sure that we do it well. And the reality is that we need to raise some money to make this happen. And like every other space in this building where all of our parents and generations of our alumni and friends have come together to make transformative spaces that reflect the values of the education. Friends, this is our next opportunity to do the same thing. So we're working hard on this. And the reality is that we need to raise some more money before it can happen. I'm not worried that we're going to be able to do that because I think people believe in the place and they believe in what it is that we're trying to do and trying to build. We're really just thinking about timelines right now. If the planets aligned, and if I can help Molly McDowell in the development office raise some money over the next few months, we are prepared, if the village says yes, to put a shovel in the ground in August. And that would be really exciting. If we have to wait a little bit longer, we wait a little bit longer. It was built in 1960. But we don't want to do that because we think this is important enough now to invest in our students right now. So the question and answer period is coming right now. It's all part of what you've heard already, I think, in a lot of different places. This place, as I talked about earlier, this place exists because of the generosity of all of you and our friends for generations. So you all hear about annual giving. Annual giving is really important. It actually is what pays the difference between what it costs to educate a child and what tuition actually means. So when you get that call from the Connect-a-thon or you get that nice note from the Alumni and Development Office, that's why. It's because annual giving really matters. When we have separate, unique items, we have a benefit every year. And as Jessica mentioned before, the benefit this year is coming up, and it is entirely focused on these health and wellness initiatives. So if you're interested in some of what you heard, come to the benefit. Even if you're not, come to the benefit because it's fun. It's a community event. We do one fundraiser a year, and we hope that everyone comes because to be in community with each other is a great opportunity. Somehow, I don't know how, it happens to be held in the MAC gym this year. That, what are the odds? Also then there is, we're in a capital campaign. This project is the last part of our capital campaign. This is what's going to bring us home in the last stages of that campaign, and it's going to transform the school for the next several generations. And then our endowment is an important part of our financial makeup. We continue to build our endowment so that the school's security over the next generations is also cared for. And planned giving is another way that many of our alums especially and parents have decided to support the school. So please come to the benefit. A lot of folks have been working really hard to make it a ton of fun and to make it a great night for everyone to be together and to support our wellness initiatives. And as we wrap it all up, there are things that I wish I wrote. I wish I wrote that. I didn't make that up. That was a student sitting right in this room talking to the Board of Trustees as she was about to graduate. And that's what this is all about. And these are the sorts of things that, you know, when we were going through COVID, or we're fighting through snow and rain, or we're just trying to keep all of the trains on the track to make sure that we're doing the best job that we can, that is what it's all about. It's that idea, those outcomes, and it's also that picture right there. Because you can do all of these things in community with each other, and the outcomes are actually better when you do them in community with each other. This is how you get a hold of us. If you want to follow, you should already be following all of us, except your screen time should be limited, even those of you who are adults. And that is the end of the formal presentation. I am sure that there are lots of questions. Happily, there's a bunch of my administrative team here who can help bail me out if I can't answer them. But thank you for your attention, and I would love to open it up for questions. Yeah. Okay. Great. Fastball right across the plate. I respect that. Okay, so a couple questions all around what this project is going to cost. So all in to renovate and add on to the Mac Gym, phase 1 is about 11 to $12 million. We've raised some money towards that. We need to raise the rest. And to your very direct question, I will give you a direct answer. We are not planning to borrow money for this project. The Board of Trustees went through an extensive process about a year ago. They said, what is the highest priority for the last portion of the strategic plan and the capital campaign? They said the Mac Gym, for all the reasons we talked about. And they also said, as the stewards of the school's finances, that they're not interested in borrowing money for that project to happen. So we've raised some money. We're looking to raise, it probably changes every time I say it, another $7 or $8 million for us to be able to hit go for phase 1. Phase 2 would be an additional $8 to $10 million. So that's a pretty big project. We don't anticipate, although I'm happy to talk to anyone after this meeting, we don't anticipate that we're going to be able to do both of those immediately, but we really want to get started on phase 1 because our kids can benefit from that. So the second phase, as soon as we raise that money, we will begin. And the architects are amazing, by the way, a firm called Kaler Slater. They have designed phase 1 where everything is built for phase 2 to just sort of drop right in. All the mechanicals, all of everything is designed so when we get to the second round to raise the fundraising for that, we're able to proceed. Is that specific enough? Yeah. Yeah.
Once you put that first shovel in the ground, what will that do to basketball, volleyball, all those programs?
Logical, great question. Question is, once we put a shovel in the ground, how long and what happens to our programming? So we have worked really hard. We understand it to be a 10-month project to renovate and do the initial addition onto the Mac Gym. So, for instance, if we were able to start in August, that would mean that we would lose 1 volleyball season and 1 basketball season. We have already started talking with all of our local connections, calling in all of our favors that we've been very generous to other people over the years for places that our students would be able to play. And we have a plan that Mrs. Hooper has been working on for months, not only to basically to build a temporary outdoor space that would serve for all of our PE classes for lower and middle, and also for a practice space for volleyball and basketball. And then for games, we've been talking to everybody who has a basketball court within a 10-mile radius and starting to kind of talk about how if our planets align, we will be asking to use their court space for games and some practices. And we have existing connections with places like Athletico, New Trier, Community House, where we've got opportunities. So we know that is sort of the biggest hurdle once we begin practice and minimizing the impact on the program for JK-12. Other questions? It doesn't have to be about the gym either, you know, about anything else that you saw. You know, after this, you won't see me for a year, so, you know, pretty much take your shot. Yeah. Oh, okay. The question was, what was the most surprising thing that happened when I started teaching yesterday for my class? And what am I teaching? So I'm teaching an upper school elective course for juniors and seniors. It's called Law in American Society. So basically, it is a study of the Constitution in depth And then we are basically trying to understand the role that the Supreme Court plays in today's life, and we are literally going to be tracing the current docket of the Supreme Court as oral arguments are being held for kids to really understand sort of why it's important. The most surprising thing, I think, for me was how quickly some of the teenagers perked up when I made sort of just a couple of points about how directly relevant the Supreme Court is to their lives. Because they hear about it, kind of in the abstract, they read the news, and somebody started asking that question, and I started talking about, well, do you think about your ability to say whatever you want online? Do you think about limits? Do you think about whether you're driving and you have rights in your car, whether the police could search your car if you ever got pulled over? And you could sort of see the wheels turning. That was super cool, and that was surprising. And then the other thing I would say that was surprising was I asked, not surprising, but just interesting. I asked them how much news they paid attention to and where they got their news from. And I kind of knew some of the answers. So we talked about how much of their news comes from social media. And, they talked about sort of how their parents consume news versus how they consume news. And the best question I got was, and it was a very sincere question. A kid said, so because they were reflecting on how their parents watch the news, either listen or read it, and said, when does one sort of start needing to pay attention to the news? And it wasn't meant as like a joke. The kid was like, should I be doing this? So we talked about it in terms of the responsibilities that they were going to soon have as adults that they don't have to think about now because they are so lucky in so many ways, right? But we talked about mortgage rates. We talked about why does it matter if the Federal Reserve raises interest rates? They don't care right now, if they're 16, they don't care what the Fed does. But if they're looking to buy their first home, they're going to want to know what the Fed's going to do and how these sort of macroeconomic processes work and how law in the country shapes the world that we live in, even if we don't know it. So I think that realization for them about the different things that adults worry about when we're adulting was that was the best conversation of the day. So the question is, what is the major issue that the city of Winnetka is asking of us? So far, they haven't asked a whole lot specifically. What we know they're going to be asking are the logical things. What's the impact on our neighbors? Is this going to have any impact on traffic in the local area? How do we align with regulations in the village in terms of how much space on the campus that we use for kind of natural space versus hard space? Mrs. Hooper, what else? Would you add anything else to that? Right, the aesthetics of it. I'm hopeful that they're going to see the beautiful design that we have, and they're not going to give us much of a hard time. But yeah, there's lots of, in this village, there's lots of groups who weigh in. They each play their role, and luckily we're great partners with the village, and I think we'll have a lot of work to do, but I think they'll be, as they always are, good allies for us. Yeah. So the question is that the board emphasized or asserted that this was the highest priority for the school in the last part of the campaign. And were there others that, sort of fell by the wayside? It's a great question, and I think especially since we were in the mode of talking about campus facilities, probably the one that fell a little bit further down the list was a turf field out here on our beautiful campus. We had a great conversation about that, and I think there was unanimity because it was a team of administrators and trustees that said that a turf field is a nice to have, whereas these updated wellness facilities and updating the MAC gym is a need to have. And there was a whole lot of elements to that really interesting conversation. It was certainly driven by program and by all of these things that I mentioned. It was also, I think, very clearly the fact that for admissions, for us as well, how we present our athletic facilities and our investment and care in athletics and wellness matters for that as well. So that was one of the elements I think that was important too. Other questions? In a class, we would have already had you up like 6 times. You would have been working in small groups. So it's 10 after 8. I think this might be a great time then for me to kind of pause this part and say thank you. If you have any questions about anything here, we've recorded this. Thank you to Mr. Gruber. And we're going to send this out to everybody. So you can listen to it again or squint at the screen for things that you missed. Maybe we can send the slides out as well. Really happy to answer questions on anything that we talked about. Obviously, if you're interested in helping us with this MAC Gym project, would love to talk to you as well. Talk to me or Molly McDowell or anybody else. Thank you for your support of what we're doing. We wouldn't be here without you. We wouldn't be here without not only your generosity, but your support, your ambassadorship out in the community, your connection with our teachers, and your work with all of our administrators as well. So thank you for coming, and I hope you have a great night. Thanks.